Hello everyone and welcome back to One Nerd to Rule Them All. In today's video we are going back to the world of Westeros and more specifically to the dragons of the Conquest. Today we are talking about Balerion, Meraxes and Vhagar. So without further ado, let's get into the video. To start, we are going to be talking about how they are described to look. Balerion, also known as Balerion the Black Dread, had black scales and wings. His fire was black, sometimes with swirls of red. When he was in the fullness of his power, his flames could melt steel and stone, and fuse sand into glass. Balerion was the largest of all the Targaryen dragons since Aegon's conquest. His wingspan was so large that his shadow could engulf entire towns when he passed overhead. His teeth were as long as swords, and his jaws were large enough to swallow up Arok's whole, or when one of the hairy mammoths that are said to roam the cold wastes beyond the port of Ibn. Balerion did not stop growing until 93 AC. Balerion was named after an ancient god of the Valyrian freehold. He was born in Valyria and was one of the 5 dragons Aenar Targaryen brought with him when he fled to Dragonstone to survive the doom of Valyria. After the other 4 of Aenar's dragons died, Balerion became the last creature to have seen the freehold in its prime. According to Tyrion Lannister, Meraxes was larger than Vhagar but smaller than Balerion, and it is said that Meraxes could swallow horses whole. However, the reliability of both claims is uncertain, since Vhagar is the only dragon described by the historical sources as grown almost as big as Balerion, and Meraxes died at least several decades younger than Vhagar. Meraxes had golden eyes and silver scales. Like Balerion, Meraxes was named from a god of the Valyrian freehold. Her egg hatched on Dragonstone during the Century of Blood. At some point, Meraxes was claimed by Rhaenys Targaryen. Rhaenys first rode Meraxes, demonstrating she was a dragon rider, sometime before she married her brother Aegon. Rhaenys loved to fly, spending more time on dragonback than her brother and sister combined, and was once heard to say that she meant to fly Meraxes across the Sunset Sea to see what lay upon its western shores. The colour of Vhagar's scales, horns, wings, wing bones and spinal chest, as well as the colour of her flames, are not mentioned in the books. However, the artist commissioned from the 2021 A Song of Ice and Fire calendar, Sam Hogg, asked for clarification from G.R.R Martin's team, and was told Vhagar was bronze with greenish blue highlights and bright green eyes. According to Tyrion Lannister, Vhagar was large enough that one could ride a horse down her gullet. It is said that Vhagar's breath was so hot that it could melt a knight's armour and cook him inside. By the time of the Dance of the Dragons, Vhagar was the hardened survivor of 100 battles and had grown almost as large as Balerion. She was also the oldest and largest of the dragons in Westeros. Her roar was so powerful that it could shake the very foundations of Storm's End. No living dragon could match her for size or ferocity. At some point, Vhagar was claimed by Visenya Targaryen. Visenya first rode Vhagar, demonstrating she was a dragon rider, sometime before she too married her brother Aegon. Now moving on to the roles they played in the Conquest and thereafter. Balerion was eventually claimed by Lord Aegon Targaryen, sometime before he married his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys. Aegon became involved in the war in the disputed lands when Pentos and Tyrosh approached him, inviting him to join a grand alliance against Volantis, and he chose to heed their call. Mounting Balerion, he flew east to meet the Prince of Pentos and the Magisters of the Free City, then flew to Lys in time to set ablaze a Volantene fleet trying to take the city. Afterwards, Aegon turned his attention to conquering the 7 kingdoms, during which he flew on Balerion. Aegon descended on Lord Moontoon and Darklyn, killing both of them during Aegon's first test. After the Ironborn victory at the Wailing Willows, Balerion burned the victors on the God's Eye. Next, Aegon took Balerion to Harrenhal, where Harrenhal, King of the Isles and the Rivers, had taken refuge in his formidable fortress. When Harren the Black had not yielded by sunset, Aegon took Balerion high up and descended inside the castle walls, putting the new castle to flame. Balerion's dragonfire burned so hot that the towers of Harrenhal went up like candles, melting and twisting into the shapes they retained to this day. King Harren and his remaining sons all perished, ending the line of the House of Hor. The men of Cracklaw Point quickly surrendered to Visenya after learning of the burning of Harrenhal. Aegon next rode Balerion in the Field of Fire, besides his sisters on Vhagar and Meraxes. Between the three dragons, 4,000 men were burned to death, including Mern the Ninth Gardener, King of the Reach, resulting in Targaryen victory. When Aegon learned that Torrhen Stark, king in the north, had crossed the Neck and was leading an army into the Riverlands, he raced ahead of his army on Balerion to meet the threat. When the Targaryen host was encamped at one side of the Trident and the northern host on the other side, Torrhen's bastard brother, Brandon Snow, offered to assassinate the sleeping dragons. Recalling the destruction the three dragons had caused at the Field of Fire, Torrhen instead submitted to Aegon. After Aegon was crowned by the High Septon, he was cheered by tens and thousands of onlookers, and he flew on Balerion through the streets of Old Town. According to song, at the end of the war, Balerion helped to forge the Iron Throne by melting the swords of Aegon's fallen enemies. In 2 AC, Aegon flew the dragon to the Iron Islands to end the succession struggle amongst the Ironborn. Aegon flew Balerion during the First Dornish War, finding Sunspear abandoned when he arrived. Dorne rose in rebellion after he departed, however, and Lord Orys Baratheon was mutilated by the Wile of Wile. Aegon retaliated by burning several of House Wile's keeps, and the king later attacked Sandstone, Vaith, and Hellhot with the aid of Visenya. Aegon burned Skyreach after House Fowler attacked Nightsong. During the 2 years of the Dragon's Wrath, following the death of Rhaenys Targaryen, each Dornish castle, with the exception of Sunspear, was burned multiple times by the vengeful Aegon and Visenya. After Aegon made frequent royal progresses throughout the Seven Kingdoms, besides allowing the new monarch to learn more about his subjects, the sight of Balerion during these visits also helped to prevent rebellion. After the death of King Aegon I Targaryen, Balerion was claimed by his youngest son, Prince Maegor, who had long coveted his father's mount, and had not claimed another dragon because he considered all others unworthy. After Jonas Arryn imprisoned his brother Ronal, Lord of the Eyrie, and declared himself independent of the Iron Throne, Maegor rode on the Black Dread to the Vale of Arryn and put down his rebellion. When Maegor was exiled to Pentos, as punishment for his polygamous marriage, he took Balerion with him. After the death of his elder brother, King Aenys I, Maegor flew back to Westeros on Balerion to claim the Iron Throne. During the Faith Militant Uprising, King Maegor used Balerion in the burning of the Sept of Remembrance and the Battle of the Great Fork of the Blackwater Rush. In the Westerlands, the king burned the seats of House Brum, Doggett, Falwell and Lorch. Maegor threatened to attack Old Town as well, but the city opened its gates to the king after the unexpected death of the High Septon. In the battle beneath the God's Eye, Maegor used Balerion to kill his nephew, Prince Aegon, and his dragon Quicksilver. After the completion of the Red Keep, Maegor began construction of the Dragon Pit to house Balerion, Vhagar, and other dragons. After Maegor's death, Balerion returned to Dragonstone. In late 54 AC, Princess Aerea Targaryen claimed Balerion from the yard of the Dragonstone one morning. They disappeared and went missing for more than a year. King Jaehaerys I Targaryen sent expeditions to try and locate Balerion and the young princess, and the Master of Coin Rhaego Draz offered a reward for any information on their whereabouts, but none came forward that was credible. Balerion was the largest living dragon in the world, but there was no sightings of the dragon anywhere. Septon Barth believed that the lack of sightings suggested that Balerion was no longer in Westeros. Rhaena Targaryen departed on Dreamfire to search for Balerion and her missing daughter. Balerion returned to King's Landing in 56 AC, descending into the courtyard of the Red Keep with Aerea barely clinging to him. The princess was severely ill and died soon after. Barth's accounts describe wounds and half-healed scars on Balerion. The dragon bore a huge jagged rent down his left side, almost 9 feet long, and fresh blood still dripping from the wound, hot and smoky. Barth speculated that when Arya claimed Balerion, she was unable to bend the dragon to her will, and instead the dragon had taken her to the place where he had been born, Valyria. Shortly thereafter, Balerion became the first dragon to be housed in the dragon pit, where he was guarded by the dragon keepers. Prince Balon Targaryen smacked Balerion on his snout the first time the boy entered the dragon pit. When Princess Alyssa Targaryen came to the dragon pit to claim a dragon for her own in 75 AC, the dragon keepers persuaded her not to try and claim Balerion, insisting the dragon had become old and slow, suggesting to her that she would much prefer a faster dragon. The last rider of Balerion was Prince Viserys Targaryen, who entered the dragon pit to claim the dragon in 93 AC. Balerion was hard to rouse, and struggled when Viserys urged him into the sky. They flew around King's Landing 3 times, although Viserys later confided to his father that he had originally intended to fly Balerion to Dragonstone. However, fearing the dragon's lack of strength to do so, Viserys had opted otherwise. Balerion died in 94 AC, less than a year after Viserys claimed him as his mount. After Aegon landed on Westeros and began his conquest, he dispatched his sisters to secure the submission of the nearest castles. Rosby yielded to Rhaenys and Meraxes without fight. Afterwards, Rhaenys and Meraxes accompanied Orys Baratheon to his mission to subdue Argillic Durrandon, the last Storm King. At the Battle of the Last Storm, the wind and rain forced them to stay grounded, but even on the ground, Meraxes slew many, engulfing Argillic's vanguard and the knights of his personal guard in dragonflame. Afterwards, Rhaenys flew Meraxes into the castle of Storm's End to parley with Argillic's daughter Argella. After the Stormlanders submitted, Rhaenys flew Meraxes to the Stony Sept to link up with her siblings and their dragons and Aegon's army. They advanced south, where all 3 dragons took part in the decisive Field of Fire, the only battle in which all 3 of the Targaryen's dragons took to the sky at the same time during Aegon's conquest. Rhaenys then flew Meraxes to the Trident in the Riverlands, where she met with her brother and sister and their dragons. Afterwards, Rhaenys flew Meraxes to Dorne to demand their submission. She did not find an easy conquest, as every castle she encountered was empty and abandoned, with only women and children and old men left in the towns and villages. Finally, she and Meraxes arrived in Sunspear, where only the 80-year-old Meria Martell, Princess of Dorne, remained. Meria told Rhaenys to inform Aegon that Dorne would neither fight nor kneel, and would not have a king. Rhaenys warned Meria that the Targaryens would return, and departed Sunspear, leaving Dorne the only unconquered kingdom. The First Dornish War began in 4 AC, when Aegon decided to conquer the kingdom at last. Queen Rhaenys led the first assault on Dorne, seizing Dornish seats as she approached Sunspear, and burning the planky town on Meraxes. In 10 AC at Hellholt, an iron bolt from a scorpion went through Meraxes' eye, and the dragon and Rhaenys fell from the sky. In Meraxes' death throes, she destroyed the castle's highest tower and part of the curtain wall. Visenya flew Vhagar to Stockworth when crossbowmen loosed bolts until the dragon set the roofs of the castle keep ablaze. Following Aegon's first coronation, Visenya upon Vhagar accompanied the Targaryen fleet, commanded by Daemon Velaryon, to take Gulltown. In the Battle of the Waters of Gulltown, the Arryn fleet defeated the Targaryen fleet, sinking 1/3 of the ships and capturing near as many. Then Visenya descended and burned the ships of the Arryn fleet. Visenya then flew to Crackclaw Point with Vhagar to accept the many pledges of fealty from the local lords. She then flew Vhagar to the Stony Sept. They advanced south with all 3 dragons and took place in the decisive Field of Fire. Visenya next flew Vhagar to the Trident in the Riverlands, where she met with her brother and sister and their dragons. After leaving the Trident, when Torrhen Stark bent the knee, Visenya flew Vhagar back to the Vale, where she landed with her dragon in the inner courtyard of the Eyrie. When Dowager Queen G.R.R Arryn reached the courtyard, she found her young son, King Ronald Arryn, sitting on Visenya's knee, staring with wonder at Vhagar. The young king begged his mother for a ride on Vhagar's back. G.R.R bent her knee and surrendered, and Ronald rode on Vhagar thrice around the summit of the Giant's Lance. Following Rhaenys Meraxes' death in Hellhort in 10 AC, Visenya and Aegon burned every Dornish stronghold at least once. The Dornish tell a tale that the Targaryens refused to attack Sunspear because they were afraid that Princess Miriam Martell had purchased a device from Lys to slay Vhagar and Balerion. But Archmaester Timothy suggests the Targaryens intended to turn the other Dornish houses against the Martells. When Aegon I died, Vhagar supplied the flames to light the fire in his funeral pyre. In 41 AC, when King Aenys Targaryen named his eldest son as heir, Prince Aegon, the Prince of Dragonstone, at his wedding, Visenya angrily left for Dragonstone. It was said that the moon turned as red as blood when Vhagar passed it. Later that year, when King Aenys arrived at Dragonstone, fleeing the first rebels in the Faith Militant Uprising, Visenya asked him to grant her leave to take Vhagar and burn the Starry Sept in Old Town, but Aenys refused. When the king died early in 42 AC, Visenya left Dragonstone within an hour of his death and flew to Pentos, where her son Maegor lived in exile. After Maegor had claimed the crown on Dragonstone, Visenya accompanied him upon Vhagar and crossed the Blackwater Bay to King's Landing. They returned on both Vhagar and Balerion to King's Landing and set off riots in the city. Prior to Maegor's wedding to Tyanna of the Tower, Visenya flew upon Vhagar to Driftmark to convince Alyssa Velaryon to appear at the wedding. When the Faith Militant continued to resist Maegor's reign, even after the losses they suffered at the Battle of Stonebridge and the Battle of the Great Fork of the Blackwater, Visenya mounted Vhagar and burned the seats of Houses Blantyre, House Terrick, House Deddings, House Leicester and House Wayne in the Riverlands within a single night. Visenya died on Dragonstone in 44 AC, leaving Vhagar without a rider. Vhagar remained unridden for 29 years after Visenya's death, spending much of that time on Dragonstone and later taking residence in the Dragon Pit in King's Landing. It was in 73 AC that Prince Balon the Brave, after achieving knighthood, set out to follow his brother Prince Aemon and become a dragon rider, claiming Vhagar. Vhagar, along with Caraxes and Vermithor, burned the Dornish fleet that attempted to invade the Stormlands during the Fourth Dornish War in 83 AC. After the death of Balerion of old age in 94 AC, Vhagar became the last of the 3 Targaryen dragons who had fought in the Conquest. Vhagar became riderless again when Prince Balon passed away in 101 AC. Vhagar's next known rider was Lady Laena Velaryon, who'd become a dragon rider before the age of 12. According to the Maester of Driftmark, the seat of House Velaryon, Laena loved to fly. When Laena wed Prince Daemon Targaryen in 115 AC, they flew upon their dragons across the narrow sea to Pentos, Volantis, Koa and Novros. Everywhere they went, huge crowds came to catch a glimpse of Vhagar and Caraxes, Daemon's dragon. After Laena gave birth in 116 AC, Daemon brought both his dragon and Vhagar back to Westeros. Laena and Daemon grew close when Daemon's niece Rhaena Targaryen and the 3 often flew together with their dragons, Vhagar, Caraxes and Syrax. Laena died early in 120 AC. It is said that Laena attempted to reach Vhagar in her final hour to fly her one last time, but she did not have the strength. Following Laena's funeral on Driftmark, the 10-year-old Prince Aemon Targaryen claimed Vhagar as his own dragon. By 129 AC, Vhagar had grown nearly as big as Balerion had been during Aegon's conquest and become the largest living dragon of her time. Prince Aemond flew on Vhagar to Storm's End so they could win the support of Lord Boris Baratheon for King Aegon II Targaryen. There Aemond met with Prince Lucerys Velaryon at Storm's End, hoping to gain the support for his mother, Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen. Aemond was forbidden from attacking Lucerys, where both were in Borros's castle, but was allowed to follow him outside. After Lucerys rose into the sky on his dragon Ertaç, Aemond mounted Vhagar and followed the young prince. The two dragons fought during the Great Storm over Shipbreaker Bay, and Vhagar quickly overcame Ertaç, whose severed head would wash ashore days later, along with the corpse of Lucerys. Aemond would continue to fly Vhagar in battle during the civil war between King Aegon II and Queen Rhaenyra. During the Battle of Rook's Rest, Vhagar and Aemond and King Aegon on Sunfire ambushed the dragon Meleys and her rider, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. Meleys was an old and large dragon, and might have stood a chance against Vhagar alone, but died from the combined assault. Vhagar was the only dragon who left the battle reasonably unharmed. The battle against Meleys left Aegon II severely injured, leaving him incapable of rule, and Prince Aemond was appointed regent. Aemond decided that the main threat in this war was Prince Daemon Targaryen, who had massing armies at Harrenhal. Aemond took Vhagar and most of the Green forces from King's Landing north to attack Harrenhal, leaving King's Landing with very little defence. When Aemond and Vhagar arrived at Harrenhal, they found the castle undefended and empty, as Daemon had left some time before to attack King's Landing, after having lured Aemond and Vhagar away from the capital. After the fall of King's Landing, Prince Aemond and the Hand of the King, Criston Cole, no longer agreed on how to proceed during the battle. Aemond took Vhagar on a one-man war of revenge. They burned much of the Riverlands, starting with every wooden structure in Harrenhal. Vhagar caused more destruction than an entire army, and severely harmed Rhaenyra's supporters in the Riverland. Without Vhagar to protect them, Cole's army in the east was later surrounded and destroyed in the Butcher's Ball, leaving the east wide open to Rhaenyra's forces. Aemond and Vhagar continued the destruction of the Riverlands, and they became the terror of the Trident. Daemon Targaryen on his dragon Caraxes and the dragonseed Nettles on the dragon Sheepstealer were sent to hunt Aemond. They were allowed to use Maidenpool as their base, as Lord Manfred Moonton feared an attack from Vhagar and found himself safer this way. Daemon and Nettles unsuccessfully searched together for Vhagar, who continued to terrorise the Riverlands. After the first battle of Tumbleton, Daemon had word sent out that he and Caraxes would await Aemond and Vhagar at Harrenhal. On the 14th day of Daemon's vigil of Harrenhal, Vhagar approached in the sky, carrying Aemond and his lover Alice Rivers. Aemond left Rivers in the castle yard, and both dragons and their riders launched into the air. All four were killed in the ensuing battle above the God's Eye. When the dragons locked together, Caraxes' jaw closed around Vhagar's neck. Daemon leapt from the dragon to Vhagar and put Darksister through Aemond's eye, and the dragons crashed into the lake. Some years after the dance, Vhagar's body was recovered with Aemond's armoured bones still chained to his saddle. Vhagar was 181 years old when she died, on the 22nd day of the 5th moon of 130 AC. This is the tale of the dragons of the Conquerors and how their lives came to an end. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. Anyway, that'll be it from me. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you next time. Bye for now.